Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ivy, also known as the Witchypreneur, here on this channel, and today we are going to be talking about vampires. Yes, let's talk about vampires. Not only are we going to be talking about vampires, we're going to be actually reacting and listening to some stories of people that have supposedly faced real life vampires, what they're actually like, what they actually do, and how they actually live. Do they really suck our blood? Do they feed off of energy? What do vampires do? Let's go ahead and get started. But first, hello there. Welcome to my channel. This channel is all about the paranormal, the supernatural, the mystical, the magical things in life. So if one or all of those things seem interesting to you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to be notified when I post. I post twice a week here on YouTube, and I do post a little bit more consistently down at TikTok, which I will link down below as well. So, what are vampires, right? Do they exist, right? We've heard so many stories of vampires. We've heard Dracula, right? We've heard Van Helsing. That's also Dracula. We've heard Twilight. Do they sparkle in the sun like they do in Twilight? Are you allowed in the sun if you're a vampire? Do they really hate garlic? These are some things that I really genuinely am interested in, like, wanting to know the answers. And the biggest question of them all is, do they really exist? Many of these people have actually come face to face with a real vampire. So let's take a look at some of these stories. The first story that we're going to talk about is probably the most famous on TikTok right now, or the internet, on YouTube. It's probably the most famous. It's like going around there, and it's about this woman that is a Uber driver, a Lyft driver. I can't remember what sort of driver she is, but she came face to face with a vampire in New Orleans. So let's listen to her story.
Hello, TikTok. Fagger Freestyle here with another story time about the time I met a vampire. I tried to do this story the other day on live and it just did not work out. But anyway, I just decided to record a video. People have been asking me about the story, so here it goes. I'm a rideshare driver in New Orleans. So, of course, I encounter all types of people from all walks of life. So one particular ride was very interesting. Now, this was a couple of years ago when this occurred. And I'm going to tell you, for the most part, I remember what she said. I do not remember what she looked like. And there are some details that when the experience was over, like, I had completely forgotten some things. But anyway, so I'm riding, pick up this passenger, and I remember our conversation. And the craziest thing is I can remember her voice. I can, and even as I'm telling you this, I can hear her voice in my head. And I can even picture, like, this part of her face around her mouth, her lips. I can see them moving as she's talking to me. And I remember her hand being on my shoulder, and I remember what it felt like when she touched me. But a lot of other stuff, it's like, was just completely erased. So I pick her up, and I do know that we were having conversation. I talked to many of my passengers, and she is telling me I have really great energy. So I told her thank you. She asked me some things about myself, nothing too private, nothing with too many details. So, I just kind of gave her some general info. And I remember her telling me that she wasn't from here. That I do remember. And then she proceeds to tell me how much she loved New Orleans, how much she loved being there, living there, et cetera, et cetera. I do recall asking her where she was from originally, and all she told me was that she was from very far away. And it's funny again because I'm hearing her voice in my head as this is weird. And I've never shared this story with anybody, so TikTok, you're getting it first. um she touched my shoulder at one point, and this is where things got really strange. She touched my shoulder, and I felt like I just froze. And even as I'm talking to you right now, I can distinctly remember that feeling of feeling frozen. And my hands were on the wheel because I could see my hands on the wheel. The car wasn't moving. And being frozen in that moment, I hear her voice, but not like I'm here talking to you. In my head, I hear her voice telling me, don't be scared, that she's not going to harm me. And then after that, we're moving again. And I remember kind of turning and looking like that. And she was sitting back in the seat and her hands were on her lap. And I said, what did you do to me? And she just smiled. And she says, I just leached some of your energy. And I said, what? She said, I just leached some of your energy. She said, this is going to sound crazy, but I can assure you it's true. I'm a vampire. She said, but I'm not the type of vampire that you've been taught about in books and movies. She said, those types of vampires exist, but they're very rare these days. I'm a vampire that feeds off of energy. And all I have to do is touch you to get it. She said, New Orleans is a great place for her and her kind to exist. And that there are quite a few members of their tribe, is what she called them. I think I remember this part of our conversation so significantly because I believe when she touched me, she implanted something in my mind, whether you want to call it a memory or a thought or an idea. But she gave me something of herself, probably, to where I can recall this portion of the interaction between us. Maybe she knew that eventually I would share the story with others and therefore maybe make it a little bit more acceptable for them to start, for her and her members to start presenting themselves. I don't know. I don't know why she even chose me for this, but she told me that there are vampires that survive off of good energy. There are vampires that survive off of bad energy. There are vampires that survive off of sexual energy. And there are vampires that survive off of blood. And New Orleans is the only place in the world where you can find members of all four of those vampire tribes. Maybe she wanted me to remember this portion of it as a warning. I don't know. But I know she wasn't lying just because of how I felt. And even now, it's crazy because I still feel like her hand is on my shoulder, which makes me wonder, when she touched me, did she create some type of psychic connection between the two of us? I don't know, but I think I need to end this. Anyway, I don't remember where I dropped her off at. I don't even remember dropping her off. The next thing I remember doing clearly was being in a part of town that I didn't remember how I even got there. And it was like 2 hours later. And I was just in a parking lot. Just in a parking lot. And I know it sounds weird, y'all. I think I probably shouldn't even recorded this. I probably shouldn't even be talking. I probably should not even be talking about this. I shouldn't.
Okay, so in this story, we are following this woman who calls herself Fat Girl Freestyle, and she is basically talking about this vampire that she encountered in New Orleans. And this vampire was just doing the ride share with her, right? And eventually started to feed off of her energy by just touching her, and she was like, "Oh, you have really good energy," and she fed off of that energy. And then she proceeds to tell this woman about the fact that New Orleans has all four types of vampires. Vampires that feed off of blood, vampires that feed off of positive energy, vampires that feed off of negative energy, and lastly, schmentual, the ones that feed off of schmentual energy. New Orleans is a place that has all four, and that's why she really enjoys New Orleans. I've been to New Orleans. I love New Orleans. I went there last year, and there is definitely something that is very, very different in New Orleans. There's a definite, like, different energy, different vibe. It just feels so supernatural there. You almost feel like you've left the earth plane and have traveled to, like, a spirit dimension. That's how paranormal and, like, supernatural New Orleans feels. So, and I have heard of vampire stories there. There's actually a vampire cafe, and I did this tour where they were talking about vampires, and there was a apartment just beyond, across the street from the vampire cafe, where they actually caught two men that had been drinking the blood of people. The next story that we're going to be talking about is about vampires in Chicago, and this one is told by a woman named Essence Creations 27. So let's watch her video and then we'll be back here once the video is over. And then let's watch this video, and then I'll go ahead and let you know my input on this particular video. Let's watch this one. You want to check this video out, Nezzy? Let's watch vampires. Do you believe in vampires?
There's a lady on TikTok talking about her encounter with vampires, so I might as well talk about mine. This New Year's Eve, I was driving Lyft, and I picked up an order, and it ended up being at like a place that used to be a church, but it wasn't a church anymore, obviously, if you saw the festivities that was going on. There were like people with cloaks and like dark hair and heavy eyeliner, and there was like a red glow from the building coming out. 4 guys got into my car. As soon as they got into the car, I felt a chill. And yes, it was winter, but it was a different kind of chill. I turned around and looked at them, and I immediately knew they were vampires. And it wasn't even just like a thought. It was more so a knowing. Before they got into the car, I was thinking like maybe they were devil worshippers, because I had seen like a goat head and like the typical symbols that you see with associated with that. But I was like, no, these are vampires. There were 2 brunettes and 2 blondes. They all had blue eyes. Not that mean anything, but their eyes were almost hypnotically blue. They were so clear, you could see through their, like, not their soul, but I can't even describe it. Their skin was white, but not white like crayon white, but it was very pale. But it was not a pale like, you know, some like white people are like, oh, I'm so pale. Even like red, people with red hair, how pale. It was still a different kind of pale, because even regular people, when they're pale, there's still some warmness to their skin. Like their skin looked cold. I don't know how to describe it, but it was more so the feeling of me knowing. Immediately, I start to panic. My heart is racing. I'm feeling like, is it too late to reject the call? Like, can I even ask them to leave the vehicle? And then I started thinking, okay, if I am panicking and my blood pressure is rising, then I'm like pushing more blood through my veins, which may mean that I may seem more appetizing to them. This is all stuff that's going through my mind. The man behind me, the blonde, who was like in the middle, touches my shoulder, and immediately it's like somebody poured warm honey over me. Like that is the calm just spreading down my body. It was like immediately I felt relaxed, almost like I was in a trance, kind of there, but like watching myself. I can't even really describe it. And I knew at that moment that I wasn't necessarily in danger. So then the guy is like, well, our car is only a few blocks away, which I could tell from looking at the app. And he's like, but before we get there, we need you to answer a question. And you have to think very carefully about this. So now I'm like, okay, this answer is going to determine if I go home to my children or not. And it could just be my imagination and like me jumping the gun, and he could have been joking, but it didn't feel jokey. So he's like, okay, well, we have 2 separate cars. How would you group us together? Who should ride with who? What? So I'm like, I look back at them, and they're smiling and they're kind of giggling. Now their teeth don't look like regular teeth, but they don't look like the typical vampire teeth either. But they definitely did not look like human teeth. Their canines were a little bit more pronounced, but not in a dramatic, fake way. I can't even freaking describe it. And actually, if I had to describe them, to sketch them out right now, I couldn't even, because it's like they're a memory, but not like a typical memory, like a memory behind a memory. I can't describe it. But anyways, I knew it. I'm like, you're vampires. Yes. I heard the answer in my head. No, I'm looking at them through because I'm like, if they lunge for jugular, I'm gonna crash us all. But I grouped the opposite hair colors together. And the guy said, well, why'd you do that? I said, I don't know. It just felt right. He said, excellent choice. He took out his phone and he's like, I'm going to start my car now. And I'm like, you can start your car from my car? And he's like, yeah, but we like you. You'll get home safe. Good. Like, you'll get home safe tonight. Have a good night. And I was like, yeah, I was kind of thinking that, doing Lyft on New Year's Eve could be dangerous, because like, who knows what kind. I was trying to make it seem like I didn't think they were the danger, but just let them know, like, in case they heard me panicking. Oh, fucking went and saw the vampire. But anyways, they got out. and they gave me my biggest tip of the night. You would think that would have been my last ride for the night, but no, I kept going. I made it home, and I didn't tell any other person about this story because, like, are you supposed to share vampire stories? I don't know. However, I just did. So just know that there are other beings in this world besides us, and maybe they're not all so dangerous.
In this story, Essence is talking about a time where she was doing a ride share and in Chicago, and it was New Year's Eve, and she stops in front of this church, or what used to be a church, but obviously it's not a church anymore because people that aren't typically what you would see going into church are seen coming in and out of there wearing cloaks and heavy eyeliner. And then 4 people step into her car, and they are pale, but not pale like a humanly pale. They're pale to the point where their skin looks cold, almost as if they're like corpses. And then in her head, she's like, okay, these people are vampires. And she gets to reply that yes, they are vampires. And then they proceed to ask her a really strange question. And then she panics because she starts to think maybe this answer is going to be what sends me home or not. And then she answers correctly, and they're like, we like you. Okay, you're going to get home safely tonight. This is very, very strange. This is pretty creepy, and this is pretty scary, okay? So she was talking about their fangs too, but they weren't like typical vampire fangs, but they weren't exactly like normal human teeth too. Like their canine fangs were a little bit more pronounced, but not as much as we typically see a vampire. So in my head, they're just like a little bit more longer, but not extremely long to the point where like it's like completely obvious, but enough for you to be like, okay, something's a little off here. And it makes you think, if there are 4 different groups of vampires, right, and they're feeding off of energy, positive energy, negative energy, smeshual energy, and blood, what category, what group did these vampires fall under? Because it's almost like they relaxed her, they made her feel like warmth and like everything was going to be okay, but she was panicking in the car and she was a little afraid. So did they feed off of that negative energy? Did he ask her that question to freak her out purposely because he can feed off of that? They can feed off of that? Or are these the blood-sucking type because of the fangs? And they just happen to be like, no, you know what? We like this girl. We're not gonna suck her blood. I don't know. We don't know, but that's very freaky. So that's another tale. Next, we're going to be talking about, her name is Christy Robinette, and she talks about a time where I believe she got like a job or something, and she believes that he was a vampire. So let's watch this one.
I'm seeing all these videos about vampires popping up on my TikTok For You page. And I never ever thought I would tell this story, at least in a public forum. But here goes. This is my vampire story. It still baffles my mind when I think that, say that, and I still get the creeps with the memory of any of this. And I'm going to be a little bit cryptic, if you get my drift, with regards to some of the experiences. But several decades ago, I had lost my job. I had just had my baby girl. So she's going to be 30 this year. So that's how long it's been. And I had gotten a job interview at a local business. Again, I'm not going to say what kind of business. And I went to this interview and I immediately felt something odd with the owner of this business. There was something so mesmerizing about him. He wasn't good looking, but he was good looking. And it's hard to explain. Like, there was just something strange about him, and he just felt almost hypnotic. And he said, I'm interviewing for a couple more people, and I'll give you a call in a couple days and let you know if you get the job. Okay. I did get the job. A couple days later, he gave me a phone call and he said, I am offering you this job at this pay. And it wasn't bad. The hours weren't bad. The pay wasn't bad. And I said, let me think about it. I had another offer on the table. And he said, please let me know by tomorrow. And I'm like, understood. So I had called my mom, and my mom is very intuitive, even though she didn't really want to admit that she was. And I told her, and I'm like, I got this job offer, and I didn't even tell her a lot of like the creepiness that this guy kind of gave me. And she's like, Christy, I have a really bad feeling. Do not accept this job. Do not accept the job. I'm telling you right now, something's not right. Do not accept this job. Now, this is a business that was in the person's family for a long time. And so it wasn't anything out of, it wasn't like a starter company. This person was kind of known in the community. My mom didn't know him, but so it was a substantial, real job. And I'm like, Mom, I don't understand. I need a job. She's like, you're going to get a job offer from that other place that you interviewed for. Just stick it out. Tell this guy no and accept the other job once it comes. And I'm like, this job was actually, it was pretty good. But I took my mom's advice and I called the gentleman the next day and I said, I'm so sorry. I am really honored, but I'm declining the job offer. And thank you very much for your time. And he's like, I will double your pay. Excuse me, sir? I will double your pay. Now, it already was good pay, but double the pay was a lot of pay. And I'm like, again, something felt really off. And I'm like, sir, I'm so sorry. I'm going to decline. And he's like, I'm going to check with you in a couple days. And there was just something very ominous about the way that he said that. And that night, I ended up having a dream with him in it. And it was very vampire-ish, is the only way that I can describe it. And the business that he was in also spoke volumes for that. So a couple days later, he called me. And I said, again, sir, I've accepted another job. And I did not tell him with whom. And he's like, I will triple your salary. And I'm like, I'm sorry, sir. And he said, I can tell that you are very psychic. And I can tell that you know who I am and what I am. And I think it would behoove you to take this job. What? So I told him again, no, thank you. And he said, okay. Now this was like, internet wasn't really a thing. Like you couldn't really look people up. There was AOL chat and such like that, but you couldn't really look people up like you can now. And so I ended up accepting a job at a cabinet store and as an office manager. And I didn't hear from him, but I was still having these weird nightmares with him in it. And I'm like, it's just got to be in my head, right? But it was almost like he could read my mind. It was very strange. Well, guess who showed up at the kitchen store the second day that I started? Yeah, this guy. And it's like he knew that I was going to be there. He's like, hi, Christy. And I'm like, excuse me, are you stalking me? Like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm ordering a new kitchen for the business. Like, it was nothing. And he continued to come in my dreams. About a year later, I ended up taking a job at a fireplace store as an office manager. A couple days into that, this gentleman walks in and says, I need a new fireplace for my business. Excuse me. Now, I'm not going to say everything about the business and everything about him, but you might be able to figure it out with a clue. And that is he lived above the business. That's all I'm going to say. So he's like, yep, I need a fireplace. And I'm like, sir, I don't understand why you're here. And he continued every time. He's like, would you like to work with me? I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. I worked at the fireplace store for a couple of years, and he would every once in a while call and he would ask for the fireplace to be serviced. And I ended up telling my boss at the time, like, how I felt about him. And he would laugh and he's like, I'm going to send you out there with the tech. And I'm like, no, you're not. But he was like, yeah, something's strange about this person. Something is almost like immortal. Even if you look at the family lineage, it's like he's existed before, and it wasn't like his great-great-grandfather. It was like him. So I ended up quitting a couple of years after that, and I worked for a school district. And guess who showed up at the admin office? Him. And in the meantime, he's still coming in my dreams. And every once in a while, he's still calling me and asking me if I want a job. And no. My mom had passed away. I'd gotten a divorce. I mean, we are eons into this. And I ended up running into him at a store, and he, like, do you remember everybody you interviewed like one time? Because he either has a really crazy memory, or it wasn't like a stalker. He just wasn't. That wasn't the case. It's just, again, it was very vampiristic. Is that a word? And so I ran into him, and he's like, hi, Christy. And again, he's like, how are you doing? And it was just very kind of Norman Bates creepy. I ended up in the job that I'm in now. I'm a professional psychic medium. I ended up having to go to a competitor of his to work on a case. And we ended up talking about this gentleman and his business. And I didn't say anything, but the owner of this establishment went, just Christy, make sure you stay away from, because he's a vampire. And I didn't laugh, and she didn't laugh. And she knew I knew, and I knew she knew too. So vampires do exist, and they don't necessarily wear capes. Sometimes they wear business suits, and sometimes they invade your dreams. And I feel as if there's a possibility that my life at that time was a little bit crazy, and it was because of the psychic sort of like vampire energy that he was sending to me, because he was mad that I did not accept a job with him. I would love to tell you more, but I don't want to open up that can of bats.
So in this next video, a woman named Christy is talking about her paranormal experience with a vampire. So this vampire, basically, she had a literal interview with a vampire. Okay, you guys, she had a literal interview with a vampire. And when she did this, and so she had the interview with the vampire, and she got a bad vibe, and she's like, you know what, I'm not gonna take it. And this man was so insistent on hiring her. He was so, I don't know what it was about her. I feel like maybe he wanted to make her like his vampire bride, you know what I mean? And even she got warned by other people that were like, oh yeah, stay away from him because he's a vampire. Anyways, as I was saying, so all these little moving pieces from different stories are starting to come together, and we're starting to see an overall arching theme to what vampires are. Yes, there are some that are your typical vampires that suck blood, which is what that woman in Chicago may or may have not encountered. I'm just solely basing this off of the fact that she saw like the fangs, and that these vampires learn how to use and manipulate energy, which is what the other two have been saying. So I think that's also very interesting. I like how she answered all these questions about it, and how this being was very powerful enough to like encounter her dreams, right? So it's like saying, what sort of vampire was this one? Was he a blood-sucking vampire, or was it he an energy manipulating vampire, right? Why did he want her? That's like my question. What did he want from her specifically? So that's another So that's very interesting. I will leave her down below because she has like a lot of paranormal stories. Apparently she was also on a lot of like TV shows talking about different things that happened to her in her life too. So she's has a pretty interesting account. Would definitely recommend watching several of her other videos. But anyways, that's it for Christy. Let's move on to yet another vampire story. And in this next video, it is told by a woman named Jess Dion, who goes by the name The Part-Time Bartender. So let's see what she has to say.
Vampires? Y'all want to talk about vampires? Okay. So I don't normally do talking videos because number one, I think I'm annoying, and number two, I am a real life yapper. So if I start, who knows where this is gonna go. But I've been seeing everybody getting on here and talking about their real life vampire stories, and so I wanted to share mine. So I'm in a PhD program, but in order to be able to like afford life, I bartend. And I bartend in rural West Georgia, to set the scene, like 30-45 minutes from Alabama. Rural. And I work at this small bar. I like to say it's like a step above a dive bar. It's not a dive, but it's not like a chain. It's not fancy, so I like to say it's a step above a dive bar. And most of my guests are regulars. So I have regulars that come into the bar every single day. I know they're going to be there. I know what time they're going to be there. I know what they're going to drink. And maybe there's like 3 or 4 new people on the bar side. The restaurant side is different, but on the bar side, like maybe like 3 new people a day, if that. Okay, so this is the middle of the week, maybe 3 or 4 p.m. It's dead. I mean, I think I have like 3 other people sitting at the bar. And this person walks in and they sit down at the bar. Okay. So I'll describe the person and I'll describe their demeanor as well. And then like, I'll give some details to what sort of made me believe that this person is a vampire. So first of all, you know the trope of like vampires have really pale skin? Opposite of that. Okay. Complete opposite of that. This person had like beautiful, dark skin, like probably the darkest skin I've ever seen in person, darkest skin I've ever seen outside of like editorial fashion magazines, you know. So really dark, beautiful skin. It just looked smooth, like there were no pores on this person. I'm saying this person because to me they were male presenting. I don't know. But so he had blue eyes, like neon blue almost. So I saw this person and I was like, these are either contacts or you're a vampire. I mean, this was an unnatural color for somebody to have for their eyes. They were also wearing, I want to call it a frock. I mean, it was like a high-necked black shirt with long sleeves. And this is like middle of the summer, so people don't wear that in Georgia. So it was a very strange gear that they were wearing. And then it was the demeanor. So the demeanor was like, okay, like looking around like, what is this place? Like they were trying to understand the culture that was going on. And so you might be asking yourself, like, Jess, could this person have been a thespian? Was he a man of the theater? Possibly. But again, we are in West Georgia. So, I mean, like, local community theater at best. And that's no shade to community theater. But this man was, like, if this person were an actor, they are method. Like, he did not break. His characteristics were very specific. Okay, so he spoke very little. And then we only have 8. Sorry, I'm going to pause. Okay, I'm not used to like holding and recording this because I never do this. But we only have about 8 beers on tap, okay? And one of them is a Yingling. So he ordered a Yingling. And I'm already thinking like, this could be a vampire. And what's interesting about Yinglings, I drink Yingling, I drink ambers and red ales. I like beers that are that color, that coppery color, and they have that coppery taste. And I like to tell people, I like beers that taste like a penny. what's interesting is, you know, if you've ever tasted blood before, if you've had like a cut or something, okay, blood tastes like a penny. Blood tastes coppery. There's a coppery taste to blood. So I was automatically like, okay, evidence, you're a vampire. So he ordered a Yingling. He sipped it, and then he acted like it was palatable. Not that he was like enjoying it, but that like it will do. He did not want a food menu. And then, let's see. Okay, this is where it got weird. Was I'm already in my head, like, first of all, okay, let me pause. Something about me. I am a skeptic who wants to believe. So I'm open to your conspiracy theories. I'm open, like I'm the mythical creatures. Sure, yeah, they're out there, but I need proof. I need evidence. So I'm willing to go on this ride with you, but you're gonna have to give me something. So I'm already like looking for evidence to prove to myself, okay, this is a vampire. And I have really bad hand eczema. So like, I don't know, can't really see right now, but like I get like open cuts. Sometimes they bleed. So on his second Yingling, I notice like I'm bleeding, and I have his little pint glass in my hand, and I hand it to him, and I hesitate, like, I don't want to like trigger you. If you're a natural born hunter, you're a predator, you're gonna lunge at me right now. No. So I like hesitated and then gave him the beer. So he laughed, but not with his mouth. Like I heard it in my brain, like a thought. Like I heard him laughing in my head, like I was recalling a memory of someone laughing. I didn't hear it like an auditory response to something. Okay. And then, I mean, that was pretty much my only bit of evidence that I had, but yeah, he just seemed like he had great disdain for everyone around him. Which, you know, it's rural West Georgia. If those ain't your people, them not your people. But he just seemed like he was either a vampire or he was like from London, you know, like, I'm just better than you was the vibe. He only had the 2 beers. He didn't eat anything. And so the total was probably like $9 something. And then I think he left 40. So really good tip. Never saw him again. Haven't seen him since. I don't even know if anybody would remember him if I brought him up. But that's my vampire story.
All right, so this woman who's a bartender, she is talking about one night when she was bartending, and you know, they have their usual guests, and occasionally they get like a brand new guest, and that's what happened this one night. It was a man that was wearing very dark clothes, right? And he had the opposite of pale skin. Like his skin was very, very dark, but it was beautiful, like poreless, perfectly smooth, beautiful, beautiful dark skin. So he goes to order, right? And then he's just looking around, like examining, like, what is this place? You know what I mean? And so he orders this beer that typically is known to taste very coppery, metallic-y, almost like blood. And so she starts talking about his eyes, and this is where I find this very, very interesting, because when she talks about his eyes, she straight up says he had very, very blue eyes, almost as if they were like contacts. And that's what got me thinking about the other earlier video about the other woman from Chicago that was talking about the group of vampires and how they had very, very blue eyes. And it just makes you think, what sort of vampire? Again, I have to raise the question, what sort of vampire was this? To me, this feels like, because he didn't order anything, because he likes the taste of that coppery, metallic-y Yingling or whatever, because he didn't order food, and it makes me think that this is the vampire. This is the sort of vampire that drinks blood. And not only so if he's the sort of vampire that drinks blood, are the other ones that were in the car with the other girl from Chicago, were they also blood-sucking vampires? I say I would love to meet a vampire, but honestly, would anybody really like to meet a vampire? Especially if that means like jeopardizing your life? Would you want to be a vampire? What does that consist of? What's their community like? I'm just really genuinely curious. Anyways, let me know down in the comments, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell to be notified when I post. I post twice a week. If you like scary stuff like this, you would love my content. You would love the videos that I'm going to be posting afterwards, here and here, and so check those out if you haven't yet. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!